Greetings everyone. Welcome to today's lecture on making of national movement from 1870 to 1947. The Congress cannot claim to be the sole monopolistic power that was playing an important role during the freedom struggle. There were different divergent trends that were emerging during the first half of 20th century. Communists and various hues of socialists who were dissatisfied with the Congress and its tactics fought with determination and sacrificed their entire lives in this struggle. Different divergent trends that can be pointed out. For example, formation of RSS and Communist Party of India. Bhagat Singh mentioned, "It takes a loud voice to make the deaf hear." So his famous slogan, Inqilab Zindabad, had a different narrative altogether, especially from 1927 onwards, when Simon Commission by Lord Simon came to decide on India's political future without any Indian representative. It created lot of outburst and outrage in India, and the slogan "Simon Go Back" could be heard everywhere. Then from 1929 onwards, the idea of Purna Swaraj under Nehru and 26 January 1930 being observed as Independence Day can be described as important moments. The Communist Party was formed in 1920, and within a decade of its formation, the British lodged 3 conspiracy cases against it. The Peshawar Conspiracy Case 1922, the Kanpur Conspiracy Case 1924 and the Meerut Conspiracy Case 1929. And while all this was happening, leaders like Bhagat Singh denounced the communal forces and also tried to build up a narrative based on class struggle as well as class unity. So his famous saying that class consciousness is needed to ensure that people do not fight among themselves and also they do not exploit each other is very important. It has to be made very clear to the poor, working class and peasants that their real enemy is capitalism. The rights of all the poor, whether they belong to any caste, color, religion or region, are the same. So these were some of the famous statements that were made by Bhagat Singh. He identified the economic basis behind the growth of communalism as well as communal rights. He further stated that if at all there is a cure for all the rights, then it can be brought about only by changing the course of direction of Bharat's economic trajectory. People have to consistently fight the government, and until the government is changed, they cannot and they should not rest. So Communist Party made invaluable contributions to Indian politics by campaigning among people that India was a multinational country and that the unity of India could be maintained only under the condition of the development of all the communities and classes. Communists examined the problems of nationalities and different identities as part of their fight against imperialism and feudalism, as well as for democracy. So for them, the fight was not only against the British rule, which basically referred to imperialism, but also to the age-old structure that was prevalent in India, which was represented by feudal ideology, and ultimately the goal was to achieve democratic ideals. It always approached people upholding the interests of the working class, and also they held the banner of democracy and involved themselves fully in different mass upsurges, especially associated with the cause of the workers. While the Communist Party was deeply involved in the struggles of the peasants and workers, building Hindu-Muslim unity as well as solidarity among different castes, among different category of marginalized people, communal forces. They pursued the path of compromise with imperialism and destruction of people's struggle, a path which led to communal carnage and ultimately partition of the country. It is in this background that one can also discuss the important role played by the Congress Socialist Party. It grew out of the experiences of national struggles. It was formed at the end of the civil disobedience movement by various congressmen who came to believe that a new orientation of the national movement was need of the hour. So the same old Gandhian politics and Congress style of functioning could no longer work. So there was a redefinition of its objectives as well as some kind of revision of its methods. And so different congressmen came under the influence of Marxian socialism, and it became natural that the organization that sprang up to meet the needs of the situation adopted the term socialist. The word Congress prefixed to socialist only signified the symbiotic relationship which they shared both in past, present and future with the organization as well as with the national movement. The CSP, as its very name implies, was an organization of congressmen who were committed to socialism, and this socialism was an extension of Congress' commitment to the Gandhian, Nehruite and other ideologies of the Congress party. For them and left congressmen, socialism was a development from the resolution of the Lahore and Karachi sessions of the Congress, and there could be no looking back. Now, sharing with you this very important visual of the ongoing struggle in the form of Salt Satyagraha or Dandi March that took place from 1930 onwards. So, this march to break salt law, as it was considered sinful to tax an essential commodity like salt, played a very important role in mobilizing the masses. It involved almost 240 miles of walk from Sabarmati Ashram to the coastal town of Dandi. And in this movement, Sarojini Naidu persuaded Mahatma Gandhi to allow women also to join the movement in large numbers. And finally, we see that the salt movement attracted several supporters like tribals, peasants, poor, and a large number of women also. As you can see in one of this visual that is being shared, that how Sarojini Naidu was taking a lead in this entire planning. Now, coming to the important role played by Jawaharlal Nehru, who had joined the INC in 1930s, and he came to be described as a new kind of Indian politician, upper class as well as intellectual, and his basic approach differed from Mahatma Gandhi, who was considered as more traditional, more religious, while Nehru came to be described as a secular, Western oriented and a modern politician. He was educated in Britain and also came to develop some socialist leanings. He accepted, however, Gandhi's ideas of passive resistance and also helping the untouchables, but still there were differences which continued to prevail. For example, for Nehru, industrialization was very important to develop India's economy and to raise the living standards. However, Mahatma Gandhi was more focused on rural development and a different kind of education, which probably was not modern in its outlook, but rooted to Indian needs and requirements. So, if we discuss as to what were the influences on Mahatma Gandhi, what were the important doctrines that he proclaimed and preached throughout his life. Of course, the most important was ahimsa, and then also civil disobedience, which basically meant refusal to obey unjust laws. And one also sees a lot of influence of David Thoreau's philosophy of civil disobedience on Mahatma Gandhi. Also, his philosophy was rooted in several aspects of Hindu religion as well as Jainism, from which he imbibed the principle of ahimsa. There was a definite fusion of traditional thought process as well as some Western liberal ideas, and till the last he kept on fighting for the rights of untouchables, and also gave a place to women in the mass mobilization from 1920s onwards. A very important technique adopted by him was that of satyagraha. His strategy to gain freedom was basically based on the force of truth, that is, the application of the moral force as well as righteous approach in politics, and no place for violence or aggression. So, this kind of non-violence again was rooted in traditional Indian philosophy and the belief in the ultimate goodness of the soul. And for this, Mahatma Gandhi prepared a core group of self-sacrificing and disciplined activists. His idea was that to be successful, it must have a widespread publicity which would generate national concern as well as an international pressure for change. So we see that most of Gandhian movements were deriving their force from the participation by the masses. And if we talk about Gandhian ideas and methods, then this was a very important technique, that is satyagraha, in which there was lot of insistence upon morality, truth, and what was right and what was wrong. This term was specifically coined and developed by Mahatma Gandhi, and he deployed satyagraha throughout the Indian independence struggle, and he had earlier also experienced it and had implemented it in South Africa for the rights of the marginalized and against apartheid. If we talk about the impact of satyagraha, then there are several contemporary leaders who have talked about that how satyagraha theory had influenced their struggle also. For example, Nelson Mandela's struggle in South Africa, then Martin Luther King Jr.'s campaigns during the civil rights movement in the United States, and so on and so forth. So therefore, this whole idea not only continued to prevail in India but also had influence internationally. His techniques included marches, hunger strikes, demonstrations, and also a public refusal to obey unjust law. So this was some kind of a rebellion without violence. And from 1920 onwards, Indian National Congress officially adopted this Gandhian policy as a means to attain independence. And in fact, one of the famous statements that was made by Mahatma Gandhi was that non-violence is the first article of my faith. It is also the last article of my creed. So this very well sums up the importance that satyagraha had on his entire technique of struggle against the imperialist rule. There were specific instructions that were given to satyagrahis. For example, there was no need to hold any anger against the opponent, and neither they were allowed to return the assaults. They were also to refrain from insults, and they also had to maintain their cool and calm, and if they were imprisoned, then they had to behave in an exemplary manner. Also, they were supposed to obey the orders of the satyagraha leaders, and whenever this was not followed, the movement would be called off, as it happened when Chauri Chaura incident happened and the movement turned violent. There were specific steps in a satyagraha campaign. For example, negotiation and arbitration. So Mahatma Gandhi was always open for negotiation. It was not as if he was not open to any kind of decision making in name of his fulfillment of demands. Also, there was always a preparation for direct action by mobilizing masses, and also there was this system of issuing an ultimatum, so that if the authorities wanted to come out and listen to the demands of the satyagrahis, that time would be given to them. Also, very important was the economic boycott, and also different forms of strike, then non-cooperation, civil disobedience, and also hindering the smooth functioning of the government, but of course by using non-violent methods. So these were some of the techniques that were employed time and again. Now, if we talk about the the contemporary developments that took place in 1930s, then a very important development was the Government of India Act of 1935, which brought about provincial autonomy. And from now onwards, the way Indian politics was going to evolve was going to change. So in 1937, government announced elections to the provincial legislatures, and in the elections that were held, Congress won in 7 out of 11 provinces. And the next important development was in 1939, which came in the form of Second World War. And while Congress in the beginning was ready to support British against Hitler, but they wanted independence of India, which was refused by British. This is a visual of Indian National Army 1941 that is being shared with you on the screen. So this was another divergent trend that was being led by Subhash Chandra Bose. And again, the point that I would like to make, that one cannot only discuss the role played by Indian National Congress in this entire struggle. So while Indian National Army that was formed in 1941, the entry of India into the war was strongly opposed by Subhash Chandra Bose. He had been elected as the president of the Congress in 1938 and 39, but later on had to resign due to his differences in opinion with Gandhi. So Bose after this found the All India Forward Bloc in 1940, and the British had put Bose under house arrest in Calcutta. However, he escaped and made his way through Afghanistan to Germany, and there he sought Hitler and Mussolini's help for raising an army to fight the British. So we see that a parallel movement was also going on through the activities of Subhash Chandra Bose, and it was not only Gandhian struggle that was the root cause or one of the means to bring about the end of British rule. In 1944, it entered India through Imphal and Kohima, but the campaign failed. So we see that the different phases of Indian national movement continue to bring about new set of leaders, a new set of ideas, a new set of means to achieve the end. Sometimes they would be a non-violent peaceful struggle. Sometimes these means would acquire a socialist leaning. Sometimes they would involve mass movement, and at times they would also require an armed campaign, the way it happened as a result of Azad Hind Fauj. Now the next important development that one can talk about, and a very important movement that played a very important role in bringing about a positive change and also in the culmination of independence, was the Quit India campaign that would be discussed in the next lecture. Thank you.